Am I recording? Oop. All right. Good morning, everyone. How's your weekend?
Good. How was yours?
Very good question. Yesterday, so my wife started a job the week before. She's like, Shin, I need clothes. So we went to WAM yesterday. We went there around 10, and we didn't realize that shops don't open up until 11 a.m. When did we do that? Did you know it? Sunday. Is it because of Sunday? Ah, that's what it is, I guess. I don't know about that. The Google lied to us. Anyway, so we did that, and we had to spend until like 4 p.m. at the West Edmonton. And I think I'm getting, we made a 10 steps inside of WAM, just going back and forth, going back and forth. So yeah, 10,000. It's not too bad. It's it's decent, I would say, you know. So shopping can be exercised. Then we polluted. So that we did. Saturday, pretty much working, housework, whatnot. So how about you guys? Anybody else? Any leisurely weekend, or you have still exams? Do you still have exams? Couple? All right. Well, good luck with that. All right. Well, so a bit of a housekeeping information today. So CCR2, critical chapter reflection 2, for those of you who submitted, most of you actually, thank you for submissions. And started to mark, and then there's somebody called and saying job that was due in 2 weeks, and they need it by this weekend. So I might have to do that, because that report will go to Ottawa and will be presented at one of the minister meetings. So that's exciting. But then they're like, Shin, I need it like ASAP. So I might have to do that a little bit, just because I'm not saying that I prioritize ministers over anybody else, but just, you know, political reason, I may do that a little bit. But I will make sure that you get the CCR2 mark and feedback definitely before CCR3 submissions, and probably this weekend, next weekend, you know. And there will be 2 guest lectures I confirmed next week coming in. So that's the only guest lecture, but those are the guest lecture coming in next week. So one person is, her name is Carrie Met. She's the Alberta Health Services Practice Director of the Provincial Recreation Therapy. So she oversees all the trainings and certifications and whatnot in the area of recreation therapy right now in the province of Alberta. So if it's interested, you're interested in a clinical aspect of recreation, she's a great person to connect to talk to as well. And another person is Dr. Haidong Liang, and he got actually a PhD here, and he became he's been our executive director at the seniors West End Seniors Activity Center for like 8 years, maybe close to. And he's been like, he's got the Queen Elizabeth II, whatever that award thingy. He was Edmonton top 40, under 40, and all that great hours. So I'm very excited to have those folks come in to talk about some of the things that we're talking about. So they're coming. So hopefully you can make Wednesday and Friday. Mark your calendar. Just a class time, but. And today we're going to keep talking about the personality and attitude. And hopefully we're not going to finish it, but we're going to get to the pretty end of the this topic, to the last part, attitudes and attitude toward leisure. So the last personality trait, besides the big 5 that are affecting leisure, I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to add, is what is called grit. Have you heard about grit? I mean, it's a typical common terminology, but grit as a personality trait. What kind of person do you think about when we say, oh, that person is so gritty? Not gritty, but gritty. Yes, Luke. Hockey player who have everything injured, but still on the ice, grinding. That's exactly sort of like that. Really, look, that's a great example that summarizes grit too. The key word here is this sustain. It's about perseverance. Hey, Noah. And also long-term goal and achieving them, making efforts to achieve them. Hey, Yang. Grit, some researchers, not me, said grit is not like, let's say, it's metaphorically, it's not like a love at first sight. It's not that passionate, intense, short-term thing. It's the long-term commitment. It's more like marriage. Speaking of marriage, that's the grit. Okay. There are two aspects. One is interest. So your goal, your passion, where your heart sets, right? Your mind is, what you're interested in. You be consistent about your personal goals. Once you set it, Dian, Colton, morning. The other aspect is the behavioral aspect. So you set a goal and you follow through, right? And you don't just give up. Now, if you're interested in more about grit and how you want to be grit, or if you're a parent, you want to be your parents, you want to make your kids more grittier, here's the information by Dr. Andra Duckworth, who is the leading expert in grit from University of Pennsylvania, UPenn. Now, my question is, when you hear this definition of grit, right? Does that remind you of some certain type of leisure that we learned already? Serious leisure, Curtis, thank you very much. That's where I'm going with. Interestingly, though, I have not seen that research yet. So this is a new phenomenon. Grit is over the past 13 to 10 years, research has been. So really, it's still new. But there is a little bit of research. So I wanted to share that with you today. Grit is positively correlated to work ethics. Probably makes sense, right? Hard worker, they tend to be. And it's negatively correlated to leisure ethics, as in these are the people, grittier people, do not think leisure is quote unquote good things. They don't have a positive attitude toward leisure. Probably makes sense. They're not like, hey, let's have fun type of person per se. But then that may depend on what kind of leisure activity we're talking about. For example, one study looked at leisure time physical activity. Grit was positively correlated to it too. So obviously, if you're coach, you have youth, you have athletes, you want to identify the grittier athletes. They may stick to what you're trying to teach them. They may persevere through challenges, losses, failures, and whatnot. Now, the last piece is this: the relationship between grit and the serious leisure. There probably is. I'm pretty sure there is, but we don't really have the data just yet. Now, the chapter also talked about the few leisure-specific personality. That there may be a personality that are very unique to leisure. One of them is, this doesn't sound like a personality, but it's conceptualized as a personality trait. What's called a leisure as entertainment. SAE, sometimes called. It's people's tendency and ability to fulfill our free time and different ways to go about it. And so that we can have a personally satisfying free time. There are 3 subtypes. Okay, so this is not like you get all of them, but you tend to have one or the other. Okay, the first mode and the best mode based on research is the self mode. So this, if you're high on this self mode trait, what happens is that you have the tendency to structure your free time based on your ideas, and you're in charge. You think that you're in charge. You can create maybe some activity, new activity. You can find them. You can coordinate with other people. You can be the leader. And then you can make your free time satisfying. Environment is the other mode, which is very contrasting to the first, which is relying on other things except yourself, such as going to a certain facility or certain program. Right? Or talking to, I know, let's say when we go out with Eric, he's always a fun guy. He's got always good ideas. So let's talk to Eric, that type of thing. Okay. If you're that person who is relying on others, you have that environment mode. And the last part, C, that we have to kind of differentiate from the A is the mind play mode, which is about the people who tend to sort of like a zoom out, often space out, and use that imagination. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but use the fantasy and imagination, their own imagined world, to sort of like kill their free time. The research tends to show that, though, the self mode is the most adaptive one. If you have that strong, you tend to have a stronger sense of control in life. You have a better well-being, so on and so forth. SAE, self-entertainment as a whole, is negatively correlated to leisure boredom. So it's a good thing. If you have that higher, you're less likely to be bored, and you're less likely to actually think leisure is a boring thing. I'm going to get to what leisure boredom means in a minute. Now, the textbook asked you this question, and I thought I'll pose it to you because this is a question from the people who who have used a smartphone, but didn't born with it at all. Now, the text authors asked, maybe the smartphone and the internet has made the needs to be good at entertaining ourselves, making our own leisure time satisfying, obsolete. Maybe it doesn't matter anymore, SAE, because we got this, right? Yours much better than mine is, probably. This is like 10 years old, but okay. Not 10, sorry. But still. What do you think about this? Courtesy you don't have your friends around you today. Anyway, talk to your neighbors if you want to. If you want to, you can think yourself. But what do you think? The technology, did it make it obsolete? Don't we need the ability and tendency to, brainstorm ideas, to have fun? Like, hey, next class canceled. I got like 2 hours between this class and next class. What are you gonna do? Watch YouTubes? Or do we still need that ability to actually, you know what? I always wanted to go there around, River Valley, so on and so forth. Does that ability and tendency still important? Look, I'm gonna get to you, but everybody, think about it, talk about it. I might ask this question. What do you think? What do you think, Luke?
Anything that might get obsolete has a really high chance of having mental health problems.
Because those people are going to be what kind of people?
It's absurd how many correlations there are to the mental health effects. And instead of people just taking time away from their screen, like say people in junior high,
right,
or in high school, they're depressed, they're anxious, they're social, they don't feel comfortable in school or in social groups. Oh, what do? Your doctor doesn't say get off your phone and get outside and get some sun. They just
can't.
They get prescribed antidepressant or an anxiety.
Yeah, but they can't. But they can't, right? Some of the people can't get out, stay away from the law.
TikTok should be illegal. Well, it's a form of media that is.
Have you watched this Social Network, the Netflix show, about how was it Social Network? No. Social Dilemma. Sorry, Social Dilemma.
Social Dilemma and Black
Yeah,
Mirror.
that's right. There you go. Yeah, the similar. Yeah, Black Mirror too.
I was like,
how the engineers are making the social media in such a way that it's actually literally addictive.
When you have access to data, you do nothing but make things more efficient.
True.
They know exactly when you will leave they know your exact tolerance for how much advertising you can handle off that.
Right. But going back to that, I think they when they ask that question, right, they didn't even think about that. The algorithms and 2018. I mean, those things existed, but maybe not at today's, caliber. The proper algorithm is much better. Right. So what do you think? Are we all good? Like this makes me, I mean, okay, I gotta be honest. I was a Japanese boy. So I was the type of kid, and then I was like a first generation of kids who were quote unquote like grew up and they're born with their tech. Like when I was like a 6 or something, that original Game Boy came out, the big one. Now I'm not talking about the color, but the big one that doesn't even fit into the pocket. The big thick one. So we would actually take that outside. So we're like our parents say, "Oh, don't play a game, just go outside and play." Sure, and we just sneak that thing in our t-shirts, under t-shirts, and go out, and we just play the Pokemon outside. I played outside, right? That type of things. But to me, this is now a different stage. The 3-year-old, I've seen literally 3-year-old were crying, and parents will just give the phone or the iPad. And I totally understand the parents are really busy too. But then kids know how to open up an iPad with the password and everything. And they just like watch YouTube. And they know how to choose the next show, next episode. Is this the ability to entertain ourselves without relying on technology? Is that already obsolete? Any thoughts? All right, Curtis.
Especially with like the parents who handing their children like technology to
Mhm.
distract them.
Mhm.
Doesn't say much about like the kids and like growing up with technology
Mhm.
so much as like the parents not really doing a good job of things
Yeah.
because they just want to quiet their kids and
Mm.
want to do their own thing. It's if you want to be a good kid, you gotta interact with your kids and stuff.
Yeah.
Like sure you could develop that kind of behavior by just handing kids technology, but if you engage with your kids, play with your kids and spend time, it's gonna be a whole different.
Yeah. I know. I was a bit of that too, but you know, I saw the reality of parents. So I'm torn apart. I see how challenging it is, and having just 10 minutes of the quiet moment is very precious for them too. So I'm torn, but I see what you're saying. Anybody else? How do you feel? Do you have the ability to entertain yourself, to have fun? If I give you next 2 hours, nothing, no assignment, no class, no work, what are you going to do? No, okay. Seriously, next 2 hours, no assignment, no class, nothing. What would you do without relying on technology? Do you have that capacity? Yeah, you can go home. Yeah, you can go home. You can go home and do what? Walk your dog. There you go. Yes, Isaiah. Go to sleep. Sleep is good. Yes, I love that sleep too. There's nothing better feeling than sleeping in. Anything else? Social hangout, catch up with a friend, although it's kind of difficult without catching up, setting a schedule without using one of those technology. It's a beautiful day out. I mean, it's a little chillier. It's a blue sky. Go for a walk. Anything else? Check out the campus recreation. What's new? You'd rather just work for the next exam or assignment. I don't know. Well, I hope you think about that. And then, think about that. If you ever have a kid, which is a good fortune, I guess, and then challenge as well, maybe we should think about that. I should think about that too. Now, the second and the last leisure-specific personality I'm going to talk about is this one. Very important, leisure boredom. It's very important, because it's been very much used. It's used by practitioners as well, especially those working with the youth, therapeutic recreation too, and other community contexts as well. It's one's tendency. That's the tricky part. It's very important because it's tricky. It's a tendency to find our free time boring and available options such as activities as unappealing. It is a tendency. It is not a state and a situation. Typically, when we say boredom, we mean bored feelings, right? Like 5 minutes, I was bored. That state and the situation. Here, we don't mean that. We mean a tendency. Leisure boredom is a personality trait. There's a stability to it too. Now, research shows that it's actually related to sometimes more substance use because, well, people tend to feel that, with this trait, people tend to feel actually bored as well. And when that happens, they need something stimuli to actually increase their arousal level to hit that optimal level. And also other things like unhealthy leisure behaviors, such as risky sexual behaviors as well. Now, this Elizabeth Wainwright study was interesting and very important as well, because her team measured both leisure boredom and also leisure boring free time situation as well, state as well. What they found was, yes, leisure boredom as a trait, as a personality was positively related to substance use. So more leisure boredom, more substance use. However, this relationship was stronger among youth participants who had a more boring state. Now, what that means is that this one, interactionist perspective approach. Remember that what was it? Was something like, ooh. Do I have it? I have it. I think that. So leisure behavior is function of personal factor and environmental factor. We got to look at the both. And here in this context, what it's suggesting is that when the personality, leisure boredom, high leisure boredom coexist with the boring situation, that's when substance use likability increases, jumps up. Make sense? When both happens, the likelihood of substance use goes up. Now, what does that mean if we want to prevent substance use? Well, A, we're gonna probably want to work with the personality, but that's gonna take a time, right? We can't change typically people's mindset, personality overnight. But we can definitely, design and redesign the situation, their leisure life, their recreation life, recreation programs, services that we offer. So by providing certain things that youth don't find boring, we can prevent that quite a bit actually, because we have to have, for this substance use likelihood to jump up, they found that we needed both leisure boredom and a boring situation. So suppress one, control one, and that can bring down the likelihood pretty much. And then over time, we can work with this personality, we can work with this mindset that leisure is boring, that belief, right? It will take a time. Now we get to the last part of this chapter 7, which is about attitude. Now, attitude is a little bit different from personality, especially the personality, the first generic personalities we talked about, the big 5, right? Big 5 are not situation specific. They're general. You're extroverted, then you're going to be pretty much extroverted, different contexts and activities, right? But attitudes are way more specific to a certain behavior. There's always target. We say sometimes in English, oh, somebody's got an attitude. Well, that's actually not true. We don't really have Luke. So Luke pointed out something. So somebody got attitude. It's not really that. Attitude is always toward someone, some activity, some place. Okay, and an attitude is not always a negative thing. It can be a positive attitude as well, good attitudes. It's an acquired structure of personal values toward certain things, whether it's a behavior, place, people, etc. Sometimes it can be as broad as like poor attitudes toward leisure in general, right? Some people argue that actually that exists in North America compared to like European people. Have you met Europeans? Sorry, Lena. British folks? I guess British folks may be a little bit different. Are you from Britain? Like Britain? England. Oh, okay, right. Yeah, of course. Even like a French part of Canada. When I went to Montreal, I was like, ooh, this is different. It was Thursday, 3 p.m., and people were drinking beer already. Oh, there's nothing, no judgment, sorry, it's great. And there's a lot, I went there over summer. So every weekend there's some like, one of those gag show, like a joke, humor festival thingy. There's a music festival. There's this carnival and everything. Something was happening every weekend, right? And that is sometimes connected to the Protestant work ethics that, religious background, the how the settlers came in because of that, their historical background, how they were quote unquote persecuted because of religious reasons and all that. So we had this work hard mentality. That's what sometimes say. Or a little more subgroup, we know actually research, based on research, we know there's a poor sense, low, sense of entitlement to leisure among those who do not have a paid career, like house husbands, housewives, especially those who are mothers. We know this for decades. And you would be able to imagine why. Because when you don't have the paid career and don't have that paid check with your name in this, sometimes sadly, this capitalistic society, you don't feel like, ooh, I didn't earn enough to have my own private time or spend the next, I don't know, $100, $200 on the things that I want to do rather than families or children's and whatnot. So there's that struggle as well. But it can be even more specific. Attitude can be more specific, not just the leisure, but certain kind of leisure. For example, exercise, right? Or even more specific than that, like what kind of exercise? Like running. I have a very poor attitude toward running. I do. Now, Rahib and Beard, they created a scale so we can measure attitudes. And this is attitude is also one of those things that shouldn't change dramatically. Like you have let's say, what is the thing that you don't like today, leisure-wise? Well, let's say I don't like running. I just don't. But in a week, I'm going to magically start to loving it? Probably not. Attitude is one of those things that are quite sustainable as well. So we can use some questionnaires items. For example, there's something called a leisure attitude scale. There are 36 questions. There's a lot of questions, which is often used by practitioners as well. And there are 3 aspects. Cognitive aspect, which is about how beneficial or useful, basically instrumental, you think leisure is. Right? It's about outcome. It's perceived benefits, perceived outcome. Affective is about how you think leisure is enjoyable, pleasant, or not pleasant. And the last one is behavioral aspect, how often you do different types of leisure activity. Because the assumption here is that the more frequently you do, then probably the better attitude you have toward it. Now, I want you to experience this thing, leisure attitude scale a little bit, and a shorter version, not the 36 item version, shorter version. Are you okay with the previous slide, by the way? Okay. So here are the first 9 questions, and there's going to be more on the next page. But I want you to write down numbers from 1 to 5, 1 being strongly disagree, the 5 being strongly agree. You know this, right? Likert scale. 1, 3, 5, and 3 being like neutral, strongly disagree, strongly agree. 2 and 4 may, disagree and agree, basically. Where is your leisure attitude? How is it? Is it positive? Neutral? Negative? Most of you belong to birth degree, so that's a little biased sample, but I see lots of 4s and 5s, which is great, I guess. But no offense, if you have 1 and 2, that's fine. Where are you? Oh, good numbers line up there. How's your attitude? This, okay. There's actually the one. Oh, you can continue to the next page, by the way. Da-dun. And also here at the bottom of the next page slide, you have question 1 to 6 are cognitive, 7 to 12 are affective, and 13 to 18 are behavioral. All right. So where is your attitude? And once you're done, I want you to carry them up, the scores, and you can put it in here. These researchers did a research with their Portuguese use. So, you know, you're not the same, obviously. You're older, more mature, and also you're not Portuguese. I'm assuming most of you are. So you can put your total score, all the scores numbers added up. And if you're going to divide it across the 3 sections, question 1 to 6, 7 to 12, behavioral is 13 to 18. Where are you? How's your attitude? Anybody done? Tallying? And these numbers are the average from that Portuguese use sample. But by no means, that's not like universal norm, but you can compare as just a yardstick and like, where are you? Ooh. Oh, that's really good. You guys done? How is it, Josh? 63. Oh no. That's good. Anybody needs a little more time? Can I ask for the quick show of hands, who are like over the total average here, 72.4? Who are above that? Okay, good number actually. But once again, I guess that's why you're in a first degree to an extent, probably a little biased. But anything that was particularly high across three aspects or particularly low? Which one?
I had 6.
Ooh, 6.
Yeah.
Well, there are like 6 questions. So you said that's 1 to all of them?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to talk about that. Luke. 29 for cognitive. So that's pretty high too. Good. So you perceive the benefits, how useful leisure is. So that's a driving factor for you. Anybody else? Anybody who were kind of low compared to that average, like quite low? Curtis. I got some heads going like, yep, not high. And that's fine. But also not just where your overall attitude is, but you can hopefully identify with this kind of tool. Okay, which aspect? Am I just not doing the leisure enough? You know, behavioral aspect can relate it to the realistic barriers to leisure, right? Lack of free time, money, so on and so forth. Okay, so that's where the problem is. Fine. Maybe also that's probably typically the most difficult one, probably, right? Okay, but we can still work with the cognitive and the affective side. But if you see the lower scores on here, cognitive or affective, ooh, okay, so these people need more quote unquote enjoyable, let's say for affective, enjoyable leisure activity to actually change their leisure attitude, or they need a little more maybe education, right? Or that from their perspective, they need to see actually the benefits of leisure in their life. Okay, don't forget about this. Do you see any particular group in our society, sorry, not the question on the slide, that might have particularly poor leisure attitude that you might know? Did you get it? Any group, subgroup in our society that who might have particularly poor leisure attitude? Maybe cognitively, maybe affectively. Maybe go down first. The people who are workaholic. Yes, probably workaholism is diagnosable addiction. So, well, I guess it's diagnosable. I guess it's more and more so diagnosable. So I would say it's directly go against leisure. So I would agree with that. Typically, there's work ethics negatively correlated with their leisure ethics too. So Curtis, you had some idea?
Yeah, I would say like for behavioral, especially like working class.
Yeah, working class, lower class.
If you're
Mhm.
working,
Mhm.
get things done.
Yep.
You're not gonna, for a lot of the questions, it's like I would spend time in doing like furthering my leisure time.
Yeah.
It's like it can't see it does.
Right. And actually thank you. And that working class, lower class, that's definitely. And also, middle-aged people, family who have children, they have the shortest free time available typically, and also typically discretionary income as well. So actually, we know that based on the statistics that they have the most challenge in terms of behavioral stuff. What about your grandparents or parents generation, older generation? Do you think they have a good leisure attitude or not good leisure attitude?
Depends if they're retired or not. My parents, as soon as they got retired, they're all their free time.
And they enjoy it? Is it good? Good.
Took them a while.
Yeah, exactly.
They
Some of the older generation, it's a cohort issue actually. Some of the older generation, probably you can see in your parents, grandparents, so on and so forth, that they have this working hard mentality. All right. So now related to attitude, there's this big theory. This is an important theory called the TPB theory of planned behavior. That's developed by a person called Eisen, and it was developed to explain volitional behavior, as in the activity, the things that we want to do, not the things that we are quote unquote required or forced to do. Okay, volitional behavior. And that's why it's being used in fields like exercise, sports, outdoor recreation, tourism behavior, so on and so forth. This is a very important theoretical toolkit for us to have. It assumes it has a very interesting assumption. It assumes that, like in many economics theory, the people are rational. And there is a little bit of caveat to that too, because, well, personally, I think that many of us are not always rational. And by rational, we mean that the people are taking into account available information and consider all the consequences, both positive and negatives, potentially, and then make the decision whether to do or not to do certain behavior. And this is the model. Little diagram represents the theory. And just about the final exam, remember in the midterm too, you saw a model. You might see another model in the final exam. Maybe this one, maybe another one that we already saw or we're going to see in the next couple of chapters. But I'm just saying, you might see a model. So when you see before the final exam, all the stuff, like if you see model, you just put the star mark, okay, on your slide. So this is about the behavioral prediction model. So the final outcome we want to predict is behavior, whether or not people do things, certain things, right? And then its immediate predictor is what is called intention. We're going to talk about what it is. You intend to do something. So yeah, it makes sense, right? It's immediately before, immediate predictor of the behavior. And that's predicted by three things. Attitude, so that's what we're talking about. And there are two dimensions. Subjective norms, 2 dimensions, and it's something called a perceived behavioral control, 2 subdimensions. Now, this line is also important because research, and there's actually hundreds of research based off of this theory, but typically they suggest that intention is the strongest predictor of the behavior, and then intention is predicted by those three things. But this guy, PBC, perceived behavior control, some research shows that they actually directly predict behavior. So that's why there's this dotted line, okay? So I want you to note that too. This just like this can help you. This dotted line can be very important. If I make a blank in the model, like hey Shin, I don't know which one is which because you blanked this one and this one. Well, there's the dotted line. So which one is it? Am I being clear enough? Okay. So let's go one by one. Intention. What do we mean by intention? It's the immediate determinant of whether or not a person engaged in a particular behavior. Tend to do. Oh, sorry. Oh, what this was off. You intend to do something. Intention reflects our motivation or how hard we're trying to do a certain behavior, how much planning happening in our mind, right? How clearly are we envisioning certain behavior? Now, both intention and behavior, but more importantly, intention here, are defined in terms of the target, cost, and time, three aspects. It's like one of those things, if you ever become clinicians or therapists, you do this kind of thing. Oh, I want you to do 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise at least 5 times a week over the next 3 months. Well, you don't do that, but something like that. Obviously, not typical human being will think this way. I will never be like, oh, I intend to do 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise for at least 5 times a week for the next 3 months. I don't intend to do that. But also the fact is, for example, when I think about, let's say, badminton, oh, I intend to do badminton. I want to do that. I'll be like, oh, maybe twice a week, maybe once in a weekday, once in a weekend. So that's twice a week, right? And I know how long it's going to be, badminton. Typically for me, it's going to be a good 2-hour session, like warm up, drill, exercise, footwork, whatnot. And then the game type of like exercise, practices, sessions, and then cool down. So it's going to be 2 hours. So I know that. And I know probably I'm speaking next one semester because during the same semester, I have the same schedule. So I'm trying, so that we have that type of framework. And we want to actually facilitate these specifics of the intention. The research shows that the more specific your intention is and also attitude is, you're not like, oh, I just want to do exercise. I intend to do exercise. But I'm like, I'm trying to do certain type of exercise at a certain, for example, intensity and how frequently. If you have that specific, you're more likely to do it. And we know that as well. Now, attitude. In this theory, attitude is divided into 2 dimensions. It's a little simpler. We basically don't have the behavioral aspect. We have affective, which is basically the same thing as the leisure attitude scale, and instrumental, which is the same thing as the cognitive aspect. Okay, this is the instrumental aspect, how good you think certain behavior is. Yes, Krista. Mm-hmm.
But then like when the actual day comes, you don't feel like going anymore. But that like, how would that tie into this? Or would that into like a different?
Have you heard it? Krista was telling us the example of us planning and scheduling to show up at the, let's say, birthday event, your friend's birthday event, right? And you bought a gift, maybe you're planning, where to go, you know what to wear and all that kind of stuff. On the exact day, you go like, do I have to go? Have you, anybody who have been in that situation, similar situation? Oh, 100%, 100%. And you're like, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well. Or you're like, suck it up and just show up, right? It does apply, actually. So that's actually part of the, I would say part of the behavior prediction too. And I'm going to go back to that actually. And then let me actually use that example maybe throughout the rest of it. So that is definitely related to intention, but also whether you actually show up at the birthday or not, is related to a few other factors as well. For example, let's say subjective norm, which is about perceived internalized social norms. So in society, typically we think, well, if you promise to show up, typically, we have idea that probably you should show up, right? So how stronger you actually believe in that, internalize that, actually would affect what are you actually, stand up, get off of the couch, and show up or not. But typically, there are actually, more immediate factor motivations, actually you're not feeling well, all those things that can affect as well. But these are the factors that you can control, arguably more so. But yes, this theory can be applied to that too. So let's talk about subjective norms, okay? It's this perceived social pressure and also social support. Sometimes it's a negative aspect, sometimes it's a more, supportive, positive reinforcement to or not to perform a certain behavior. For example, show up to your friend's birthday. There are two interesting subdimensions though. One is called injunctive, which is about what other people say you should or you shouldn't do. Like what typically, you were brought up in a family where you made a promise, Krista. If you made it, you're gonna, keep it, right? And if you're brought in that family, probably you tend to like, you know what? I promised to my friend, I'm gonna show up to her birthday. Now, the other aspect is called the descriptive norm, which is about what other people do. So you're trying to model what other people do. And you have lived long enough. Some of you spent 20 years in your life. Some of us spent more than 20 years. We've lived long enough that we know they're not the same thing. What people tell you to do or not to do are not the same thing as what they are doing. Think about your parents. I'm pretty sure they're lovely people. However, have you ever been in a situation where like, Mom, you're told to do this, but you're not doing that? Have you ever been in that situation? And that's sometimes for just, good intention, right? They want you to have a better life than they did, right? So they care about your well-being and health. So they tell you something that even they don't do, okay? But they're not the same thing. If people around you are doing certain things, then we're more likely to do. For example, going back to Krista's example, if you know that actually in a group chat, everybody's actually showing up. And if you feel like, oh, I'm gonna be the only one who is not gonna show up, then you're more likely to actually show up. Make sense? Because you're kind of feel that more pressure. The last and important is PBC, perceived behavior control. Our perceived ease or difficult of performing behavior. If your friend's place is 45 minutes away by drive, that's difficult. That's a little more extra things for us to do. Or the outside is minus 50 degrees. Someone's birthday is February in Edmonton. That's not a good birthday place to have, actually. And then it's more difficult to get to that person's place, right? So you're less likely to do. There are two aspects, capability, our perceived ease or difficulty in relation to our perceived capacity, our ability, okay? And that's perceived. It doesn't mean how good you are, actually. It means how you think you're good, how good you think you are, okay? They're not the same thing typically, right? Sometimes you're much better than you think you are, but that lower perceived capacity can undermine. And the second component is controllability, the extent to which the behavior is up to you. So maybe, for example, us going to their friend's birthday, we may think, oh, this is up to us. It's a beautiful day. It's easy. We're going to just go. But if the birthday is, let's say, well, whether it's horrible or the birthday is, well, birthday example is getting really difficult. Let me use a different thing. Exercise. Right, exercise is, for example, outside exercise, right? Running outside, rock climbing. There is an inherent uncontrollability, right? Weather, for example. But if it's indoor rock climbing, it's very controllable, right? So this is high and more likely to do. So overall, this theory suggests that if you have stronger intention, you're more likely to do the certain behavior. If you have better attitude, you're more likely to do it. If you perceive more support and pressure, as in subjective norms, you're more likely to do it. If you perceive more control in the certain situation, you're more likely to do it. Now, that last piece, PBC, perceived behavior control, has a direct link to the behavior based on the research as well. So that's where we are, and we're going to talk about TPB in the next class a little more. But hopefully you will show up to your friend's next birthday. I don't know when it is, but gonna be it.
See the grid slide?
Yes. Thank you for coming to the Monday class. I will see you Wednesday. And for those of you who have exam, good luck. Which one? All right. One before? See you. See you. Today?
Yeah.
Shouldn't be. It's only Wednesday, I think. Why? Do you want to study?
Yeah, I'm just gonna sit here.